All right, guys. Welcome again to the Mac Forum Sunday video chat broadcast. This one covers July 6th, 2014. I hope those of you here in the States have enjoyed a wonderful 4th of July weekend. Hope you didn't celebrate too much. I know most of you are still out celebrating. Thought I'd do a short video cast tonight to keep us up to speed on things. Not a whole lot going on this week that I paid much attention to in the Mac world. There's a few things here and there, but we'll get to that in a minute. I want to be sure to let you know that as we go through the week, there's a few things here and there that came up this week that were kind of interesting. One of the things, and I'll post the links for it in the notes here in just a minute after the video chat. We had a couple of people posting various iTunes questions this week, and one of them, Mac Forum member Shelly99, asked about some problems with iTunes and tagging, and I have to tell you, there's a lot of things that are intuitive about Apple software, but tagging things in iTunes and how iTunes sorts things can drive you nuts if you let it. It certainly has gotten to me a few times. If you've listened to the show over the last several weeks, you know that I've been having an ongoing fight recovering some of my iTunes library because of various problems, but also in the result of that, as a result of that, and some other iTunes library problems that I've had, I've noticed some things about tagging in iTunes that can either make your life a lot better or a lot worse, depending upon how well you understand how iTunes handles tagging. And so we'll get into that a little bit, and just to be sure that you kind of handle that, it's what it boils down to is being consistent in the way you tag things, and also in understanding how iTunes handles a couple of things. And I have some links that I'll post a link to a Mac Forum thread that member Shelly99 started. And in there I posted some links to a couple of articles that seem to explain a little bit about how iTunes handles tagging. And one of the things that you need to understand that really causes a little bit of confusion is the iTunes setting in preferences, in the advanced preferences, where it asks you if you wanted to copy things to the iTunes folder, and also whether you want to have iTunes organize things. If iTunes organizes things, if you set it to let it organize things, you've got to make sure that those tags are the way you want them. For example, one of the things that I encountered in one of the incarnations of playing around with my library, I couldn't figure out why certain albums, or artists rather, where I had several albums, and if I searched for that group, not all of the albums showed up correctly. In other words, for example, if I was searching for the Beatles, some of the albums showed up, some didn't, if I was in the list to show artists. Couldn't figure out what was going on for the longest time. And then I read one of the articles that I posted a link to in that thread. And one of the problems with the way that was leading to this problem is the way that the music was tagged. For example, let's say you've got 5 Beatles albums. And if you do a get info on each album, if you want it to be consistent about the way it's sorting, go into iTunes, do a get info, and then look at the sorting tab and look specifically at the sort albums and sort artists fields. Because what you will see there sometimes, if albums do not appear where you think they should be, this field may be the cause. For example, if one of them says Beatles and the other one says The Beatles in the sort field, the album that says The Beatles is going to appear way down in T, in The Beatles, The Doors, etc., etc., etc. Whereas the album that just says Beatles is going to appear way up in B. That's one of the problems. So you really need to be consistent with that as far as the sort album is concerned. Do you want that "the" in front of it or not? Among other things, that's one of the things that needs to be consistent. The spellings in the sort field as compared to the regular group name, same thing. Making those consistent across numerous albums. Another one, and this can be a big problem even if you download the information. For example, I am a B.B. King fan, and I have some music that I have downloaded, purchased from the iTunes Music Store. I have some B.B. King albums that I have purchased from the iTunes Store, but I have some that I have on CD that I've pulled into my iTunes library. And I noticed something. When iTunes went to the database, the music database, I believe it uses Gracenote, to pull in the tracks for some of those albums, there's a real inconsistency in terms of the way the artist is fixed there in the tracks. If you look at the first two letters, B, B, some of them have a space between the B's with the periods there, like somebody's initials, so it's B period and then a space and then another B and period. Some of them do not have that space in between. The problem is, as far as sorting is concerned and as far as the way your music folder organization is concerned, iTunes treats those as two different artists, really. I mean, it puts them kind of side by side in the list, so it may take you a while to catch on to this, but if you go into your music folder and you start examining the way the folders are laid out, at one time I looked and I had 4 different folders named B.B. King because of differences in the way that those first 2 letters of his name were applied. So if go in, my suggestion would be when you notice that happening, if that's important to you, it doesn't annoy some people. It did annoy me a little bit because it made it hard to build an accurate smart playlist without including each variation of the spelling. Go in, decide on the spelling that you're going to use, and change all of those to match. And you can do that by selecting several and then do a get info and realize that you're changing more than one album. So don't change things like the name of the track and track numbers and that kind of thing because you're dealing with multiple albums, multiple items anyway. Change the artist and make sure that change carries over to the sort artist field. And that will clear up a little bit. Another change that I made, and I have not posted this in that thread yet, because I'm still looking through the collection to see how well this worked for me, and I think it has worked well, is iTunes, when it goes to deal with compilations, sometimes you will end up with a lot of things in compilations that have the designation various artists, and you really don't want that. You don't want it that way. Okay, then the solution to that is find that album that you don't want tagged that way, And there will be a setting in the, if you go and do Get Info again, and go to the Options tab, it's probably been designated, so select the entire album. Let's say you have an album, and it's now, right now it's designated as a compilation. The artist is listed as various, and it's way down in the V's with various artists. What you want to do is to go into iTunes, select that album, and select all the items, rather, so that you have all of them selected, and go and open the Get Info, do Get Info like usual, open it, and go to Options, and change the compilation setting from yes to no. And that will allow that album to move to a different place, depending on what you have, the sort items set to, what designation you have for the sort album. What I have done, I try to follow the following pattern when I do this, and it's kind of simplified the organization of my library a little bit. I'm still cleaning up a few things with tags as I've replaced various things in my library recently. What I've done is this. If I have an album that actually is a compilation, let's say, like, for example, I have one, it's called Woodstock 2. Or things like, for example, there are a couple of tribute albums where various people are covering tunes made by a certain person. Those truly are compilation albums because you have multiple artists contributing to that album. I've left those as compilation with the artist field, album artist, set to various, and then the individual song artist will be whomever is performing that song. What I've done to kind of clean that up a little bit is this. If I have an album, say for example, where there is a duet. For example, B.B. King did an album with Eric Clapton called "Riding with the King," and he's also done a couple of others where he did. It's him as the primary artist, and then he has duets with other people on that same album. I didn't put those as compilation albums. I leave those with B.B. King as the primary artist, and then whomever is involved in that duet, I will put either in the out to the side in the name of the track, or in the comment section. Now, the advantage of putting it in the name of the track, so it would be featuring so and so, is it usually pops up in iTunes right under the title. If I put it in the comment section, it's completely out of the way, and I don't have to see it. But iTunes can still use it if I build a playlist based on what's in the comments. So I know that's probably a little bit confusing. So what my suggestion is to do is to choose a way that you want this stuff tagged and be consistent in the way you apply the tags. It may mean that to get it tagged in a way that makes sense to you, you may have to manually tag them or use some of the tagging utilities that are available. But it's well worth the time. And also, I want to make one other comment about tagging, something that seems to be true, or at least for me anyway. And I invite you to comment if your experience was different. But one of the things that I've noticed is this. Let's say that you have an album in your library and you originally had it tagged as a compilation. You've got a backup, you originally had it tagged as a compilation, and you decide that you don't want it as a compilation anymore. You change that tag to something else. and now for whatever reason you have to load from your backup. That backup still has it tagged as a compilation. In other words, that tag is going to be whatever it was when you had it set. So when you re-import the file, you're re-importing the tag information. So when you make a significant number of changes to your tagging in iTunes, be sure you back up and make sure that you get everything. Right now I'm trying to back up a little more regularly than I have, because in the last few months I've had some library issues with actually not losing the library information in terms of the library files themselves, but losing the actual data files because of a hard drive crash on the drive that I was using to share the iTunes library over the network. The other good reason for taking the time to tag your files and really spending some time understanding how iTunes handles tags is when it comes to sharing that library with other devices like your Apple TV. If you're finding that you're spending a lot of time trying to scroll through and find content on Apple TV, go back and take a look at some of your content that you're having trouble finding. Do a get info on that content. When you're in iTunes on your Mac, do a get info. And then look at the sorting field, sorting tab, and fill in some of that show information. And there are some suggestions there for what the field should contain, but if you want it to contain something else, that's okay, as long as you're consistent. And then you can build your playlists, etc., based on some of the criteria that make a little bit more sense to you. That will help clear up a little bit. I still like iTunes, but I'm more and more falling into the category of people who think that it is time for a major, not just rewrite of iTunes. I mean, I know they just released iTunes 11 not too long ago, but I think it's time for a major overhaul in the way we think about iTunes. Let me give you an example. I've been using iTunes since shortly after it first came out. Now, the reason I wasn't using it from the beginning, the very, very beginning, is that at that time I had not put much of my CD collection into iTunes. I didn't have a lot of content in iTunes, in part because my CD player was right there next to the computer. It was easy to reach over and grab a CD. I had a selection of probably 40, 50 CDs that I was playing at the time. Didn't need access to the whole library. But then I realized that I was listening to the same thing over and over again. And finally got a machine that was fast enough to let iTunes work in the background while I was doing something else. So I started playing the CDs through iTunes, gradually pulling in CDs, and that worked until Apple decided that they would run all your content through iTunes and let iTunes kind of become the front end. So you have movies and TV shows and podcasts and all these things get added to iTunes. And that was okay in the beginning when people did not have large libraries. But as the years have progressed and more and more content is being added, more and more types of content is being subsumed in iTunes, because now you've got audiobooks and you've got apps from iPhone, iPad, etc., and you've got all these things all kind of subsumed in iTunes. Every once in a while, iTunes just seems to sort of run home to Cupertino and not really function as well as it could. So I don't know exactly how I want them to rewrite it. Okay, I have given that some thought. I just haven't thought of a good answer. I do think that one of the things that needs to be done, and I've said this before, and I'm sure there are people who will disagree with me, but that's okay. Um, One of the things that I think needs to be done is to design a way for iTunes to function almost as a piece of server-side software. So, for example, if you have Apple TV with a, for lack of a better word, a server edition of iTunes on it, you wouldn't need to have iTunes open on a Mac and have home sharing running in order for for Apple TV to work correctly. And yes, I know you can have the stuff in the cloud and stream it. Okay? I know that. I get that. But the problem is, if you are one of those folks that is on a limited bandwidth, limited use type of connection, where you have a limitation in how much data you can use in a month, whether it's your home internet connection or a cell phone connection or whatever, you're not going to want to stream something unless you really need to. And so streaming everything from the cloud, depending upon what your data plan is and what your setup is going to really hurt that bandwidth limitation. So I'd kind of like to see them run a stripped-down version of iTunes that basically just behaves like a server, and it sits either on the Apple TV or, you know, however, if they want to turn the time capsule into a standalone box that does it, it's okay by me. I think the Apple TV, though, is a good candidate because it's a relatively low cost, and if with the iTunes server-side software on there, then I would be able to read the content off of my network drive without needing to have iTunes open on my primary computer or even on any of the computers on my Mac. Those are the kinds of things that I'd like to see. And there's got to be a little bit better way of handling sorting and tagging. And I know there's some third-party tagging utilities. I haven't used all of them. I've tried a couple of them, and particularly, I don't like them, I don't hate them. It's a give or take kind of thing. But the thing that really is kind of annoying is until you take the time to understand the way iTunes tags things, you're going to constantly find yourself in a situation where you are expecting your library to be structured one way and iTunes is structuring it another way. One of the things that will reduce that a little bit is decide how you want that setting to be. There are two settings in the preferences that deal of particular importance. One is, do you want that content copied into your iTunes media folder? And that does exactly what it says. If you tell it yes, it's going to take, let's say you have iTunes, some content on an external drive, and you import it into your library. If you have iTunes set to copy that to your media drive, that's exactly what it's going to do. And then if you have iTunes set to organize the media folder for you, that's what it's going to do, and it's going to organize it according to how you have that content tagged. So it's going to be very important that you go in and spend the time tagging the content and make sure that you have the library files backed up. And I'll off the top of my head, I cannot remember where those 3 or 4 files are stored, but I'll pass that link on to you after the show. I'll do a little digging. I know it's a simple location. I just can't off the top of my head remember where it is. So it's going to be important that you take the time to understand how iTunes works. And probably just about the time that I get it completely figured out, someone in Cupertino will hear our pleas and do a major rewrite of iTunes. I thought maybe it was going to come along when Yosemite comes out, but judging from the keynote, they didn't spend a whole lot of time on iTunes. I don't think there's really going to be a major rewrite. The kind of thing I'm talking about is not just adding this feature or putting this feature back or changing this feature. It would involve completely rethinking the way that you want iTunes to work. And I really would like to see probably something like a server-side setup. I mean, there may be a better option, and I'm sure some of you probably have a better idea, but hopefully we'll see something along that line soon. And that's what's taken up a lot of my week. Finally got a new external burner and put it on the MacBook Pro. And that means that I've gone through some backups of the iTunes library that I had on DVD, reloaded a few things that were missing. I still got some CDs I have not found. I'm going to have to reload those. But that project has taken up a lot of my time this week. My next project is going to be a little more interesting. Probably going to be a colossal pain in the keister for me. I've got, a couple of months ago, I put an SSD drive in my primary drive bay, and then I took the OWC data doubler kit, and I removed my DVD drive, which was not really functioning very well anyway. I removed the DVD drive, put the old hard drive into the optical drive bay, and that drive contains both a Snow Leopard installation for the rare occasions I need to boot in Snow Leopard these days, and also has my Windows Boot Camp partition with XP. And I'm going to update this partition pretty soon to Windows 7. And so I want to suggest to you, if you have not already done this, if you go to add a data doubler kit to your machine, and you've got your Windows partition on the drive that you're going to move into the optical bay, do your homework first. Windows can be a little bit of a pain when it comes to trying to get itself installed in something other than the primary drive bay. So, you want to really think about, if you're going to upgrade your Windows, maybe you do that before you take your hard drive out of the primary bay. And there are some other hoops that you can jump through to make it work. But the main thing is, if you haven't already done that upgrade and made the combination, but you're thinking about upgrading Windows, since XP has reached its sort of end-of-life kind of thing as far as Microsoft is concerned, or maybe you just need Windows, you haven't put Windows on before now, and you're thinking about doing all this stuff at once, maybe it would be good to decide what you're going to do as far as the Windows upgrade first, and that will probably make the process a little bit easier because you can put the Windows update on there before you move the drive to the drive bay, to the optical bay, and that should work. Just something to think about, and that's my next thing I'm going to be puzzling with this coming week, is what's the easiest way to do that with the least headache. And if you hear a scream coming from the south central southeastern portion of the United States, you will know that something has gone horribly, horribly wrong. It's not my fault. And the fact that I didn't read the directions has absolutely nothing to do with the chaos that I've encountered. Okay, that's just it. Reading directions or not reading directions has nothing to do with the chaos for me. Um, by the way, I would read directions more often if they were comprehensible to normal people. Just a hint to those of you that write technical support documents. But anyway, those are all different kinds of things that have turned out to be a little bit bigger pain than some people have thought. Obviously, when you're moving through and trying to make these kinds of modifications, it's kind of hard to know in advance what you're going to do, say 6 months from now, a year from now. But we have seen a number of reports on the forum of people trying to figure out, I want to install Windows, but it's complaining it doesn't want to install in the optical bay, and that kind of thing. And how you handle that depends in part on what kind of Mac you're using and what your setup actually is. So think twice about that as you're setting up. If you have questions, post to the forum. There are a number of people smarter than I am about that have done this before and are good at dealing with some of the problems that come up when you make that switch. I think that's going to be less and less of an issue as more and more machines, both Mac and PC, ship without optical drives. But until Microsoft decides to handle copy protection in a little bit different way, that's going to be an issue. I don't really have an objection to them protecting their copyright. It's just that they seem to have picked a very annoying way of doing things that not only does it possibly cut down on some of the people that are pirating Windows, and I'm not sure it does that, but it also manages to annoy people who have legitimate copies of their Windows and are just dealing with some unusual situations in their configuration. So do put some thought into that before you decide to do things like that, and before you make major changes to your configuration. And I want to mention, what I'm about to mention now is something that I thought of just before the show started, and I'm probably going to research this a little bit more and maybe write a blog about this, write for the blog soon. So take what I'm about to say in terms of as a general comment. Okay? We consistently get comments from people about they have a certain Mac and it's slowing down, and what can they do about it? Well, you have to think in terms, there's a couple things you need to know. What are you demanding from it? What's your current configuration? How much memory, what processor, all of those things. But one of the things I want to mention that you can do sometimes, let us suppose for a moment that you have an older Mac and you're trying to keep it running, and you start thinking about putting in the newest operating system, the newest that, and all of a sudden the thing slows down a little bit. You're trying to figure out what you can do. Well, there's a couple things. Sometimes an older system will run a new operating system fairly well. Okay, I've got a late 2008 MacBook Pro. I've upgraded the memory to 8 gigabytes. It runs Maverick reasonably well, and it will probably run Yosemite reasonably well. But if you have an older machine and you discover that it's not running the newer OS, and you just don't have the money to add memory, or maybe you've maxed it out as far as memory, you don't have the money for a new machine, one thing that people sometimes don't think about is one way to extend the life of the machine is to look really hard at what version of the operating system you have on there. Okay? In other words, if you backed up one iteration or two iterations of the operating system, would you back up to something that is more functional for that machine? And here's what I mean. And these numbers are just for the sake of argument. Don't take this as gospel for any particular machine. Let's suppose that you have a Mac and the initial operating system that it's shipped with was 10.5. And now you're up to 10.9 and you don't like the way it's performing. You don't really want to spend any more money upgrading it, and yet you need to do something. One of the things that you might consider, and this will depend on what features you need and what software you're running, but when you're looking at what operating system runs best, look at something middle of the range. So let's, for example, say that a utility like MacTracker says that the machine started with 10.5 and it's capable of running 10.9 or 10.10, and you don't like the way those are running. If you back up to something, say, in the middle, say 10.7, which would be somewhere in about midway of that range, you're probably going to get a decent performance, most of the features that you need. You are going to have to think about, because sometimes in the process, as you make a change from one operating system to another, you gain features, lose features. So look at the features, but look at the operating system and try to run something that gives you the best possible combination of the features that you really need and speed. And it may take some time, and if you're not one of these people that is heavily into the guts of upgrading, it may require a post or two into the forum to ask some of our more experienced members what they think would be the best operating system for that configuration. But I know, for example, I had a 2006 Mac Pro, and it maxed out in terms of the operating system that it could run at 10.7. And it ran 10.7, and for what I was doing with it, it ran okay, but it wasn't my primary machine. I could set it there and let it grind on some things, and if it took longer than I thought it needed to, that was okay. I could set it to running something in the background. I had another machine as my primary machine, so if it took longer than it should have to run a particular task, not that big a deal. I probably would have been better off backing up to 10.5 or 10.6. If I'm not mistaken, that particular Mac may have shipped with either 10.3 or 10.4. I don't remember which, but I noticed that as we got closer to the end of the software that it would support, the more it started to slow down. So your options are, think about what you're running and when you run it. Like, for example, if I'm doing video conversion, I'll run those at night. I'll batch convert them with something like Handbrake. If I'm converting something and saving in a particular format, and I know the save's going to take a long time, I'll run that at night. I always have. That's one of the reasons I had the Mac Pro around. And it's one of the ways that I kept it functional long after a lot of people would have gotten rid of it, was by doing those kinds of things. And to be honest with you, would have kept it going far longer than I did if it hadn't died of what I suspect is either logic board failure or power supply failure. And I started looking at the cost of replacing either of those components and decided that it really wasn't worth it by the time I paid somebody the fee to figure out what it was, whether it was logic board or the power supply. Power supply replacement is not something that I had tried at that point. I've done lots of other changes to Macs, but hadn't done that. Logic board, I hadn't tested those kinds of things, and just decided that it really was not worth spending the kind of money that was going to be required to get it checked out. So it's basically a hunk of metal being used as a table right now. But that's something to think about if you notice that a machine starts to slow down. First, do the things, the maintenance, like running Onyx, and then start looking, and if that doesn't speed things up, then start looking at the tasks that you're demanding. Start looking at, is it worth upgrading memory? Because in some Macs, memory upgrades are not going to be that expensive. You got memory that you can purchase relatively cheaply. It does not have to be purchased from Apple. That's a misconception that pops up on the forum regularly. The memory, in terms of for the machines that are user upgradable, the memory does not have to be purchased from Apple. You do need to go to a vendor that is good about making sure that it is up to spec, because out-of-spec memory has been known to cause a lot of issues for Macs. So make sure that whomever you go to, that memory is up to spec, and that they have a good return policy should you get something that is not up to spec. Find that out before you buy. But there are some machines, particularly some of the newer ones, where you can't upgrade the memory yourself. You really have to know ahead of time. So for those, if you have one of those machines, you're going to need to think about, before you go out and spend a fortune on a new machine or on any kind of changes or the few changes that can be made, think about the tasks that you're asking the Mac to do, the ones that are slowing down. Think about what maintenance might fix the problem. Is the slowdown due to a hard drive, for example, as being a problem? Ask some questions. Ask a lot of questions before you plop down any of your hard-earned money. And one of the changes that you can make to your way of thinking is, do I really need to run this task while I'm doing something else? Is this something that I can run at night when I'm asleep and let the machine do what it needs to do? Do I really need to run 9 programs at one time? You know what? All those things. Think about the way you're using your Mac, and is it possible that there's a more efficient way to do things? I'm not saying that you have to radically alter the way you do things. Sometimes minor changes will be sufficient. Just something for you to think about, and as I say, as I think about this a little bit more and perhaps get some input from some of our experienced members and clarify these thoughts a little bit, I'll try to put something up on the blog for you to think about. I've written about this before when I was writing about this particular Mac, but the situation has changed a little bit in the last few years in the sense that we do not have quite as many upgrade options on the newer Macs. The old ones, my blue and white G3 that I affectionately referred to as Franken Mac, by the time it died, I had added memory, I had added a processor card, I changed out the DVD burner, a whole host of things that I had done to it. Some of them you can't really do to the new machines. So you really need to think about those kinds of things. I'll probably have some ideas posted about that in the coming week or so. And for now, I think I'm going to call it a night. Hopefully you found some of the comments interesting. I will see what I can do, and if you check back in a little bit, I'll have those the link to that thread about iTunes and the organization, and in that thread you will see a post that I put up with some links to Macworld as far as some tips and tricks for organizing and understanding how iTunes sorts your library, and I hope you find those helpful. Until next time, next week, I'll let you know. I'll try to post during the week, an idea of what's going to be up and coming on the next show, just to give you an idea. I've got a couple ideas I'm thinking about, so I'll probably look for about about Tuesday or Wednesday, maybe an idea of what's up and coming for the next show. Might start a question and answer thing. You happen to be here. I'd certainly like to take questions if you happen to be here. But if you wanted to send a question or something, we might be able to arrange that. I'll try to get the kinks worked out of that early in the week. So until next time, this has been your old buddy Sly Dude for the Mac Forum Sunday video chat, and I'll see you next week.